Hey, my name's Jim. This is CGC Sports Illustrated, and it is time for an unboxing video. So, let's talk about, while I'm getting this opened up here, let's talk about my unboxing videos. So, I've kind of been hit and miss. I've had some great boxes in the last couple of months. I've had some real terrible boxes in the last couple of months. And that's just kind of how it goes with grading. And despite the fact that I've been doing this for a really long time, it seems like every box surprises me. But this one, I'm guaranteed to enjoy and love. And it's strictly from purely a collector standpoint. And let's talk about why. So I've got 6 slabs here. 6 slabs here, and they are all first covers. They are all of massive superstars in various sports. And most of them, 1, 2, 3 of them, half of them I have never owned before. And the reason why I know that I'm going to just completely love and enjoy this box is because there's going to be a mix. Some of these I've never owned before, and the grades aren't going to be great. And I've done my grade projections on these, and the grades aren't going to be great on some of them. And that's okay because I've never owned it before. Let's do this. Do that there. So these are going to be a lot of fun. And, the reason why, I can think of, the 3 that I've never owned before. It's not like I haven't been looking for them. I've been looking for them for a long time and just haven't been able to find them. So a lot of these are really rare, really hard to find in newsstand. And even though the grades might not be great, now some of them the grades could be good, but there's several of them that the grades won't be that great, but it's okay because it's really hard to find, and it's me finally, getting that issue that I've been looking for and finally getting a copy of it. So let's rock and roll. 6 slabs in this box, all first covers of massive athletes. You know the rules. I know exactly what these issues are, but I don't know what the grades are, so you're getting my honest reaction right here. Oh! Ah! Yeah! Oh, that is so painful. Oh. The search continues on this one. So I've owned this one before. I hate 9.6. It's my least favorite grade for modern issues because it's so close to a 9.8, but it's not. And most of the times, the difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8, you can't even see. This is Barry Bonds' first cover. Came out on May 4th, 1992. This 9.6 is a pop 1 of 1, none higher. I would have been thrilled and ecstatic if I could have gotten a stinking 9.8 on this. And I'll tell you where the flaw is. Let's take a look at it. Right there. Right there. So this is what makes these issues, some of these issues, condition sensitive. Try to make sure you can see that. See that white, that little chipping of the ink right there? So this little black strip that runs along, that's actually not part of the cover. This is a tri-fold cover. So you would open this up and there would be like this advertising insert on the inside. But the rest of the magazine is slightly bigger than the cover. And so that black part there is actually part of page, 2 or whatever. But what that means is there's another fold here. And whenever you've got a fold, you've got a chance of that cover ink just kind of chipping away and showing white. And that's exactly what happened with this one. So what makes this, a little bit more tolerable, even though it's a 9.6, is this is a pop 1 of 1, none higher. All of us in the hobby have been chasing and looking for that first 9.8 of this issue. It would have been freaking amazing if I could have pulled that off, but didn't. There is one 9.4. There are 2 9.0s, and there's an 8.5. So tough issue to find, really condition sensitive, tough to get in a high grade. My projection on this one was 9.4, so I beat my projection. But you know me, those 9.6s are painful. And this one is really painful because there is no 9.8, and there's still not a 9.8. Is Barry Bonds the real home run king? Been a good debate. Aaron Judge breaking the American League record, hitting 62. A lot of people consider that the real record because they think that Bonds and McGwire and Sosa were all juiced up, and let's be honest, they all probably were. I think McGwire is the only one that admitted it. But does say first Barry Bonds cover on there. That's a small victory. When I get a 9.6, I'm just looking for small victories in other areas. So, that's a bummer. Okay, 9.6 Barry Bonds. Still good, but you know me, a 9.6 is let's move on. Next up. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. This is an issue that you see that 6.5 and you're like, wow, that's not the best that's not the best grade in the world, but it is Nolan Ryan's first Sports Illustrated cover. So this came out on June 16th, 1975. Particulars are that there's one 9.6, there are two 9.0s, and there's an 8.0. My projection on this one was 7.5, so I missed that by a full grading point. And missed it big time. But it's Nolan Ryan's first cover. Really, really impossible to find this issue. Also, very easy to confuse with his second issue. So this one came out in 75. I think his second issue came out in 76 or 77. It looks very similar to this. So if you're on the hunt for a Nolan Ryan first cover, the first and second covers look very, very similar. I mean, it's like almost the exact same shot. He's in his wind-up standing on the mound, and the shot just looks like this. So be careful if you're looking for a Nolan Ryan first cover that it's actually the first one and not the second one. It's a very collectible issue. There's, like I said, there's a 9.6 and two 9.0s. A 9.0 sold on Heritage in April this year for over $5,000. So really collectible. Again, not the best grade in the world, but I don't care because it's the first time I've ever owned this, and really hard one to find. And you see that Nolan Ryan in that 6.5. Okay. Let's see if we can get one that exceeds my projections. How about that? Can we get that? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Pretty good right there. You know this one. Joe Montana first cover. January 25th, 1982. Pop Reports. There's one 9.6. I've said this before. I used to own that. I found it raw. Got it graded. Sold it. A little painful that I don't have that one still. There are two 9.4s. I do own one of those 9.4s still. There's a 9.2, and there are now five 9.0s. My projection on this one was 9.0, so happy that I nailed it on that. I've owned a bunch of copies of this in all sorts of grades, 9.0 and above and higher, and the 9.6 and 9.4, and I've owned some ones well below 9.0 as well. Very iconic. It's Joe Montana. You don't need me to go through his particulars of, national championship in college and 4 Super Bowls and all that sort of rot. What is really interesting is he is the first athlete that I've found, I think this is to be the case, the first athlete to ever appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Time, and Newsweek, all on the exact same week. So this came out on January 25th, 1982. It was, right before the Super Bowl that year, when the 49ers won their first Super Bowl, and he was on the cover of Newsweek, Time, and Sports Illustrated all in the same week. I actually own the Newsweek and the Time copies as well. So Montana, first cover, 9.0. That's good. That's a nice grade for a really, really big superstar. Okay, halfway through. See what we got next. Again, all first covers, all massive stars. And ones that a lot I've never owned before. I've never owned the Nolan Ryan. I have owned the Montana and the Barry Bonds before. Okay, pretty good. Pretty good. 8.0. First Dan Marino cover, says it on the label right there. November 14th, 1983 is when this came out. Very few of these graded. So there are two 9.6s. Good for you guys that own that one. That's awesome. But then you got to go, so 9.6, that's the highest graded. There's two of them. Then you got to go all the way down to 8.5 before you get the next one. There are four 8.5s, and now there's one 8.0. My projected on this was 8.0, so that's better. 2 in a row that I've nailed after missing so badly on that Nolan Ryan first cover. Never owned this before. Marino is probably the greatest NFL player to never win a Super Bowl. There are only 13 now. Lucky number 13. 13 copies of this in newsstand graded in existence. Really, really tough to find. Number 13, and it's Dan Marino's number. His number 13, retired by the Dolphins, Hall of Fame in 2005. Famously played himself in the Ace Ventura Jim Carrey movie in 1994, which that movie still cracks me up every single time I see it. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. So that movie was a ton of fun. Dan Marino, I mean, he's one of the best of all time. And, you know, keep in mind, he had all the NFL passing records back in an era when it was a running league. Now, all his records are getting broken, obviously, as offenses have totally changed. But, man, Dan Marino was as good as it got back in the day, and the poor guy just never won a Super Bowl. Okay, 8-0 Dan Marino. That's nice. 8-0 Dan Marino. 9-0 Joe Montana first cover. Pretty darn good. Pretty good. And makes up for that, my blowing the Nolan Ryan grade by a full grading point in that painful Barry Bonds. I should be happier about that. I should like talk to a therapist or something and be like, okay, what is wrong with me to where I get a 9.6? It's the highest graded copy in the world of a huge superstar, and I'm annoyed by it. Probably take 2 years and like $20,000 worth of therapy to figure out why that bugs me so much, but that's going to bug the crap out of me. Next up. Ooh, this is vintage. At least looks vintage. Okay, not so vintage. And again, I knew this one was not going to be great. 5.5. Interestingly enough, back-to-back, that was the Dan Marino first cover that we just had. This is John Elway's first cover. It says John Elway's first cover right on the label there. So this came out on November 8th, 1982. Pop reports, there are 2 9.4s, there's a 9.2, there's an 8.5, there's several others graded. Not a lot, tough to find. I projected this at a 5.5, so feeling good about myself. I knew this wasn't going to be great. I knew it had a lot of problems, but I've never owned this one before. Really tough to find. Before today, now. So there are, with this one in the group, this is 5.5, there are only 12 copies in the world graded in newsstand of this issue. 13 copies of Dan Marino graded. 12 copies of John. It's freaking Dan Marino and John Elway. So tough to find. This one may be a little bit harder to find because he was in college. And we really don't know, think about it. People didn't collect Sports Illustrateds, back in the early 80s. Not really. And so you got this guy named John Elway on the cover, and okay, fine, he's in college, but we don't know if he's going to be a huge superstar. So I don't know if I should save this, even if I am kind of a collector of these. I think that when an athlete has their first cover in college, tougher to find those in a high grade because they aren't, saved and preserved and bagged and boarded and kept in better condition and that sort of stuff because we just don't know what they're going to be yet. So again, only 12 copies of these graded. John Elway, 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl MVP, regular season MVP, number 7 retired by the Broncos, Hall of Fame in 2004. Never owned this one before, so I was thrilled when I came across it and very happy to own a copy of that in any grade. Okay, last one. Let's see what we got. Well, things just took an interesting turn, didn't they? Yeah. I need something stronger than water after seeing that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's a purple label. So before I do the reveal, let's spend some time talking about labels. So what we all want in the hobby is the blue label. It's blue on the front and back. It's called the universal label. This is the standard label. This means that, this is universal. This is the standard label. The purple label means that somebody has tried to restore this magazine. And CGC has detected that restoration, and they've given it a purple label. So that means there's something wrong with this issue. Most of the time, what I see is color touch. So you see this on a lot of covers with black because it's really easy to do. There's a spine tick that breaks color. Somebody just takes a Sharpie and marks over that white part. And if you're not looking real close, it's real easy to miss that. And then you send it to CGC. They use their high-tech detection methods, and they're like, oh, there's color touch on the cover. We're going to give this a purple label, which means restored. And then there's the qualified green label, and that just means there's something wrong with this issue. Something's up. Most of the qualified green labels you see are for autographs, because CGC doesn't do third-party authentication of autographs, so they give it a green qualified label. There's a lot of other reasons that you can get a green label, but this issue is a restored label. So, somebody altered this issue, and I can tell you it wasn't me. So interestingly enough, well, let's take a look at the grade, because I'll have more of a story about it, because it'll relate back to a recent unboxing video. If this turns out to be like a 9.8 or a 9.6, because they don't deduct for the restoration. That's why you get the purple label. So you can sit here and somebody can do all sorts of color touches and alter the magazine and all that sort of stuff. They're going to give it that grade as if that, wasn't there, but you get the purple label. So that's the problem. So if this ends up being like a 9.8 or a 9.6 or a 9.4 and a super, super high grade, the purple label is going to hurt even more. But let's take a look. Okay, so not a super high grade. Still a super amazing collectible issue. Wayne Gretzky's first cover, if you don't recognize this one. And it says, small amount of color touch on the cover. So I always like to use these as teaching moments so that hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. So on a recent unboxing video, I had this exact same issue, exact same Sports Illustrated issue, Wayne Gretzky first cover. And it came back to me and it was labeled subscription. I thought it was a newsstand. And this has happened to me maybe 5 or 6 times out of the thousands of slabs I've gotten graded, where I've sent an issue in that I was convinced 100% that's a newsstand issue. And CGC comes back from them and they're like, nope, we see some label, some glue residue, or some former remnants of a label having been there, and they label it a subscription edition. And I talked on that video about how whenever you buy issues, keep this in mind, it's a risk. You aren't sure. So you can sit here and go, man, this is in great shape. I've really, improved my self-grading skills and that sort of stuff, and this is going to grade really high. There's always that risk that what you're buying is a subscription issue where the label has come off and you just didn't see it. So be careful when you do that. If you're spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on raw issues on eBay, you're taking a risk. And that's a big risk with that much money. Similar to this, and I'm seeing a lot more of this, unfortunately. I'm seeing a lot more purple labels where color touch is the issue. Again, people are buying these on eBay. Color touch is tough to spot, tough for me to spot. And I've been doing this a long time. But you pay a lot for an issue, and it turns out that somebody has done some crude coloring on it or some restoration on it, and CGC detects it, and you end up getting it back as a purple label. So this is a couple of good examples, and it's a good warning. Be careful out there. Know that whenever you're buying an issue, even if the issue's in your hands, you're taking a risk that something may have been altered with that. It may have had a mailing label. Somebody might have used color touch, and if you pay a lot of money for it and you end up getting a subscription issue or a purple label back, you're pretty much stuck with it. So there's always a risk, always the risk. And that's and it says right there, I don't know if we can get that to focus enough, but it says small amount of color touch on the label. Oh, that's painful. So that's 2 Wayne Gretzky's now that I've had. That one came back as a subscription and the other one came back as the purple label. Fun box. Like I said, I'm really happy because there was a number of issues that I've never owned. The quick recap, I got that Barry Bonds first cover, 9.6. I think I'll be happier about that later. But right now it's annoying me. Nolan Ryan first cover, 6.5. Joe Montana first cover, 9.0. That was a beauty. The Dan Marino was an 8.0 first cover. The Elway was a 5.5. And bummer to kind of wrap it up on a restored purple label here that snuck by me, Wayne Gretzky first cover at 6.5. Comment, like, and subscribe here on YouTube. If you have not joined the Facebook group yet, shame on you. Go to Facebook and search CGC Sports Illustrated and join that group. You can also find me on every social media platform, same username everywhere, CGC Sports Illustrated. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it.